So this session is about receiving the Department of Education grant and what it involves. Welcome everybody. I'm going to move on to the next bit and do some acknowledgements and key information to get us started. So first of all, as Helen's already said, this session will be recorded and it will be uploaded to the Parent Participation YouTube account. So if you don't want your face on the recording or your voice, please do switch off your camera or put what you need to in the chat. We won't be mentioning people's names. If questions go in there, we'll just read out the question. We do have a designated time at the end for questions on this content, and we'll also stop the recording at some point, and Ben and I will still be here if anybody wants an informal chat. You can ask questions as you go, though. We can see the chat, and as Helen says, you can raise your hand. Please do keep yourself muted if you aren't talking to help minimise background noise. Just to be aware that some people may be using AI tools to transcribe or to record information on the content today. At the end of the session, we'll send you a link to a short feedback survey. Please do complete that. Your views and ideas are really important to us to help us improve and develop how we can support. So this session looks at what you agree to as a parent carer forum when applying for that Department for Education grant. The requirements haven't changed, and PCFs read and accept them as part of their Department for Education grant application annually. So some people will be really familiar with them, and some people will have already read them for this financial year already. But this session is an overview of the requirements of the grant that you can share with others in your parent carer forum who might not be involved in the grant application process. And we're hoping to create a short video here that people can access whenever they want to share with their forum about the basics of the grant requirements. Just want to make some acknowledgements before we get going, because it is a really, really busy time for families with disabled children and for forums. It's also, I'm wanting to acknowledge, I think, that the grant was available to apply for in April, and we are now in May doing this session. And so anyone that was applying in good time might have wanted to have this by now. So just wanted to acknowledge that. But it will be there, it will be recorded, and you will be able to share it. And obviously, if you have already applied for the grant, you would have seen all the requirements. But often that is only a select few of people within the forum that are working directly on the application. So it's good to have a resource you can share. We're going to be talking about grant requirements, which aren't, so the conditions of grant are fairly relevant to this specific grant and parent care forums, but there's a generic code. And I guess we want to acknowledge, Ben and I, that the reality and lived experience against the wording of very strict grant requirements and code can feel a bit daunting. We're committed to supporting parent care forums to meet those conditions and to be effective and sustainable. So if you watch any of this and think, oh, we haven't got that in place, or that we're not doing that, that's okay. We can support you to get to a point of meeting those conditions. And it is not unusual for us to give a grant knowing that a condition isn't being met, but knowing that a forum knows that and is doing something about it.
Okay, yeah, so what we'll cover today is the conditions of grant. Within that, there's linked to is the government's code of conduct for grant recipients. And then we'll look at the Memorandum of Understanding with the local authority, so which is within the grant application. And obviously, like we said before, opportunity to stay on for questions, ideas, support. And we might have to get back to you on some questions, but we'll pursue those answers for you. Just a quick note that the conditions of grant as a separate document is available on the website. We've got the link here, so but we would need to be completed by the form, obviously. But you can refer to that. I hope that link works to you. It takes you to the link that's on the website. Yes, and then the next part is the purpose of the grant. So that's outlined in the end of the conditions of grant just before you sign it. But it's the purpose is. As it says here, parent forums to engage with local parents and carers to help improve services for children and young people 0 to 25 with SEND. It strengthens the PCF supporting parent carers to shape services and influence decision making for children and young people with SEND. The purpose of the grant is to support, develop, sustain parent care participation in local areas, enable the strategic participation and representation of parent carers with local statutory and voluntary partners, improve service provision, development and improvement. The grant is for parent participation to represent families with children and young people with a range of special educational needs and disabilities. I think it's good to know that, to see that in clear, just when you're making that application to know for the true purpose. So this is where we get to the conditions. What the grant could be used for. The must only be used to develop and sustain parent care participation, improve co-production with local services, help parent carers influence services, and support collaboration training and peer support, and support work linked to send reform and consultation activity. And then there's a limit on 75% of the total grant can only be used on there's a limit on the 75% of the total grant to be used on staffing. That's just to ensure that it's not all going on wages and there's other elements to the application.
Yeah. Is that me?
I can't remember.
It's all right. We'll go back and forth. So what the grant cannot be used for is party political activity, religious promotion, lobbying or campaigning, alcohol, parking or speeding fines, gifts over £25, and activity that isn't approved in your grant application or agreed with your advisor. So we're very realistic that you might make an application and then, you might need to change what you said you would do in that application. As long as that is approved by your advisor, then you're safe and you know that that is something that is within the purpose and the conditions of grant. So you should be fairly safe if you have an approved application and you're working towards that. So the conditions of grant are within the application form, lots of wording, and they are legally binding. So the person named as the condition of grant signatory is legally responsible for following the grant conditions, completing the monitoring forms within the deadlines, making sure funding is used correctly, keeping accurate records. If the signatory leaves during the year, there must be a formal handover. Otherwise, the original signatory still remains legally responsible. We'd still be contacting them if we weren't updated. And all DfE funded parent care forums should use the parent care forum handbook as the standard for their work and work towards being fully in line with that as part of the grant conditions. Still got people joining, so I think I'm just going to quickly say welcome to anyone new that's joining and just say that we are recording, so just to be aware of that as you come in. If you don't want to be recorded, you can turn your camera off. Welcome. So there are financial rules in the conditions of grant. They're about keeping accurate financial records for 7 years, following your financial control policy, providing receipts or proofs of expenditure if asked, and maintaining an asset register for items over £500. There's also a point in there about seeking 3 quotes for services or work where appropriate and ensuring good value for money. So the DfE grant money, it's got to stay in the approved bank account. It can't be transferred to another organisation without permission, and it cannot be distributed to other groups. I think this is still me. So the conditions of grant includes information about what governance and policies parent care forums are expected to have. So when you sign those conditions of grant, you are signing to say that you have the constitution or governing document, terms of reference, code of conduct, conflict of interest policy, complaints policy, and that you have a minimum of 3 parent carers involved in decision making. And that conflicts of interest will be declared, recorded in minutes, and won't influence decisions, and close relatives or partners can't both be authorising payments or expenses. Now, those policies that are mentioned there, we have got a section on the handbook about policies required by the grant application. So if you click on that link, I know you won't be able to now, but we could put it in the chat. If you click on that link through the handbook, you can be taken to all that information. Okay, so the other policies that you'll need as the parent care forum as part of those conditions of grant is a safeguarding children's policy, a safeguarding vulnerable adults policy, and these policies must be regularly reviewed and be actively used and updated. Equality and inclusion duties must be complied with, so preventing discrimination and harassment, improving equality of opportunity and supporting positive relationships. And again, there's the link there to those specific policies and more information on those topics in the handbook for you. And the slides will definitely be sent out, so you will be able to click on all the links I don't know if Helen behind the scenes, you might be able to copy those links into the chat for us. Apologies, I didn't think about that earlier.
So I can talk about this. The PCFs, so on part of the conditions of grant is about the submitting the grant monitoring by the deadline and provide evidence to spend if requested, and then cooperate with their audits, monitoring, and requests for information. And there's an additional bit about monitoring. Obviously, if the parent care form closes mid-year or after receiving the grant in that financial year, but then needs to transfer to a new organisation or is folded and Contact needs to reclaim those funds, there needs to be there's some monitoring and financial responsibility still apply. So you let us know about that, and we'll be in contact to send them the remaining documentation. Remaining money then will be returned once we've done our monitoring at this end, and then deadlines will be set by the grants team, and these would still need to be adhered to. But obviously there'll be some flexibility, but it's just yeah, that's part of the conditions around that. But yeah, there's sections on GDPR, which just outlines the how to follow the GDPR rules, protect members' personal data, and get consent before sharing personal information. And it's got a DfE privacy notice as well about the purpose of the data and the legal basis by which that is sourced. And then there's fraud and clawback rules, which clawback is where the funding may be reclaimed. That's if the current conditions are broken or information provided is false or misleading. Duplicate funding is received and you've reported for the same for both. Financial management is inadequate, or the PCF does not cooperate with monitoring, or governance is poor, or fraud is suspected or proven. And then conditions about working with Contact. PCS must respond to requests for meetings or information, discuss concerns openly, and accept support if it is a condition of funding. So there may be additional conditions we add as part of the application approval process, and we'll communicate those to you. And then notify Contact about important changes. Examples include officer changes, bank account changes, particularly governance concerns, or like we said before, PCF closure. The bottom line is, by signing the conditions of grant, PCS confirm they understand the conditions, they agree to follow them, they understand that it's a legally binding agreement, and serious breaches may lead to funding being withdrawn or reclaimed.
Thank you. So there's an additional sort of link within the conditions of grant to a very general code of conduct for recipients of government general grants. So this code is wide and it isn't written directly for parent care forums and your experience. It is written for anybody receiving a government grant. Um, that so we'll talk through all the generic points in that, but you can see the exact wording again that is on the website as well. But basically it's to act with integrity and professionalism, which I know everybody is going to be doing, behave ethically and responsibly at all times, protect that public money and help maintain trust in that grant funding. Use the grant only for what it was awarded for, which is really what the conditions of grant are saying as well. So spend funds only on the agreed purposes, deliver the activity to the agreed standard and scope and as planned. And the code does acknowledge that sometimes variations of spend need to happen, but please let the advisor, it doesn't say in the code, please let your advisor know, because they don't know about advisors because it's generic, but it acknowledges that variations are needed, and our process would be that you check with your advisor. So be transparent and accurate and open with information. So providing true, accurate and complete information in applications, your monitoring returns and any other communications. And tell us promptly if something goes wrong, delivery risks, significant changes, underspend or overspend, or issues affecting delivery. So it talks about managing money properly and showing value for money. So keeping proper financial control and records, being able to evidence that spending decisions are reasonable and represent value for money. Prevent fraud, error and misuse. So cooperating fully with checks, assurance activity and audits. Managing conflicts of interest. So identifying, declaring and managing conflicts of interest. So that's actual, potential or perceived. ensuring decisions, especially financial or procurement decisions, are fair, justifiable, and properly recorded, and keeping good governance and oversight. So, making sure the organisation has suitable governance arrangements. If delivery involves partners or subcontractors, the grant recipient remains responsible for ensuring those parties meet the equivalent standards and requirements. That it talks about following the law, so complying with relevant laws and regulations. So we've already touched on equality, safeguarding, data protection, and of course those specific conditions which we've already been through of the grant. Protecting people and data and sensitive information, so handling personal data and confidential information appropriately and lawfully, using information only for a legitimate purpose connected to the delivery of the grant. So no improper use. I mean, most grants have this. Do not offer to accept bribes, gifts, hospitality, anything that could influence, decisions, and avoid behaviours that could create suspicion of undue influence. So, with the Memorandum of Understanding with the local authority, that is part of the grant application form, and it is a unique element of a Parent Carer Forum Department for Education grant because that grant is to work with the local authority and other partners, but at the moment, the grant has the agreement with the local authority within the application. You need to be able to work with them to be able to have this money and do the work well. So that asks parent care forums to agree to some core principles, but the local authority are asked to agree to those same principles as well. So as part of that grant application, your forum says that it will follow the SEND code of practice and use co-production as the way of working, that it'll work in partnership with the local authority and health organisations to improve services for children and young people with SEND, that you'll treat the local authority and health as key strategic partners, recognising their statutory responsibilities, and that raising parent carer issues constructively through open, respectful dialogue, challenging constructively where needed, and work together with mutual respect and as equal partners. That's just the wording, the exact wording there that we've just screenshotted for you, because not everybody gets to see all of the application that's involved with the forum. And the local authority memorandum of understanding. So when you complete your grant application, you write in a local authority contact and they automatically get sent an agreement. That's right, isn't it, Ben? They automatically get sent something to sign to say that they'll agree with you, that they'll work with you against the same principles as what you've agreed to. So it's just ensuring that that partnership and understanding is there. And they are, of course, asked to recognise the independence of you as a DfE funded forum, and that they are asked to confirm that they value your role as well. So it's just slightly different wording for them. We're talking about valuing their role as strategic partners, and that we're talking about valuing the role of the forum. But again, it's also about working through open dialogue, challenging where needed, but agreeing to work together with respect and as equal partners. There's a question in the chat that says, is there a draft MOU that LAs have? I'm not sure there is a draft. I think for the DfE grant, it is just that exact one that we've put on the slide. Let me know if I'm not understanding your question properly.
Yes, just to explain it, once you submit your form, they'll get a link to a form to complete, which agrees they sign to agree with that wording that we showed before. They might have some other agreements with the forum but that would be done separately outside of the application.
Yeah, that's right. You can have other agreements with your local authority. This is just the agreement that relates to working together in line with the DfE grant. So thank you very much. We've whizzed through that content fairly quickly. Just first of all, want to check in if you have any questions about this session and this content today. It's quiet. Like a standards template.
Just a standard template for you can. I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
I wonder if you're meaning a draft partnership agreement or agreement for the forum to work with the local
Yeah,
authority.
yeah, apologies, Kate. I just meant in terms of like MOUs and stuff, is there like a template across like all the councils where like this is the starting point which they should be having with PCFs like a MOU, or is it like each council decides on their own MOUs?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think each council decides its own. There isn't a standard one,
Okay,
not one that we reproduce or share anyway. But I think that's a good question and perhaps a consideration for the future.
thank you.
Yeah, and Catherine's written a good comment in there about Kath's one of our associates that she's worked with forums where we have set up an MOU other than the grant, and that's right to mention that advisors and associates probably will have some experience of different local arrangements that people have. So if you don't have another agreement with your local authority and you want to discuss that or get something that works for you both, there will be people and things to share. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'm just wondering if there aren't any more questions. Well, maybe there are some more questions. I'll give some space first.
I should make a comment on that link to on our form on our website is just the form that the local authority contact will receive. It's basically the same as what you're signing on the application, really, just with some added GDPR elements because but yeah.
Just a massive thank you to everybody that was able to make it today. We will get the recording up and the slides out as soon as possible, so that you can access and other people can look in their own time because we know it's really busy at the moment. Take care if you're going now. Thank you.